there's been a bit of a problem with modern gaming keyboards, and this one has most definitely solved it. But what is that problem?
You're just trading a lot more money for a worse keyboard that has gamer marketing attached to it, and it locks you into a really tight ecosystem. They've never wowed me enough to actually keep me using them.
But then apparently this keyboard fixes it, so let's put that to the test. And why does it look so different than the other shot? This is gonna be a fun one because we've got the Fun 60. Get it? The Fun 60 and it's a... Anyways, well, it's fun because apparently in this box is a keyboard that's better than the Wooting 60HE in almost every way. That's cheaper, better build quality, not really hard to do. And it also has the potential to sound better, feel better, get you a girlfriend. Okay, maybe not that last one. Let's find out. Now, full disclosure, this video is sponsored by Akko, who did not review this video, did not tell me what to say, and all of my thoughts are my own. Now, the reason why this keyboard is so exciting starts with its price, because this bad boy is currently on sale for $64, although it is on Amazon for $90. So there's a huge price range there. Your mileage may vary, link is in the description, but don't buy it yet because we have to put all of those claims to the test. Now, if you're not familiar with gaming keyboards, there is a lot of jargon, there is a lot of terminology. And as I unbox this thing, I will try and make it a little bit easier on you. Essentially, some things to note. There's Hall effect, which is a type of keyboard. There's TMR, which is a similar type of keyboard. We'll get into those later. There's rapid trigger, there's SOCD, there's snap tap. Don't worry about any of that yet. It'll all make sense soon. Now, buying a gaming keyboard won't inherently make you a better gamer, but there are some features in a gaming keyboard that could prove to be useful in a couple niche situations. So if we cut through all the marketing, let's take a look at this board. Now this is the Fun 60 Ultra TMR, and whoa, it is way heavier than I was expecting. I was expecting a plastic keyboard. It is made out of aluminum, granted, it does not seem like a very high quality aluminum whatsoever. Yeah, and scratch off the finish. So we've got kind of a finish gate issue here. Same deal as the Wooting 80HE. But for the price, I was expecting really, really garbage quality, but wait, what the, guys? Why do you have a strap in the same spot as the Wooting 60HE? Now, if you don't know, the Wooting 60HE is one of the most popular gaming keyboards for various reasons, mainly, this is cheating. But for some reason, they've copied the visual design here for no good reason. I think this is really lazy. I don't think you need a strap here. They should definitely change that. But some things that we need to look for in this keyboard. Number one, what makes it different? Number two, what makes it better? And number three, should you even buy it? And that last one is actually really quite the distinction. We'll talk about the keyboard more later, but first, the accessories. You actually get a really premium metal switch puller, a not so premium plastic keycap puller, a basic cable, and whoa, a wireless dongle. This keyboard is gonna be wireless? Okay, that's intriguing. You also might notice to my side, I have two sets of switches. One of these is magnetic and the other one isn't. Now, why on earth does Hipyo have two sets of switches? One magnetic, one not magnetic. But magnetic keyboards can only take one kind of switch, right? I'm not gonna spoil it. That's the secret of this keyboard. It's actually kind of insane. Now, I'll talk about the tech that makes this thing so interesting a little bit more later. First, take off a keycap. Now, if we take a look at these keycaps, they're pretty crappy. They're really basic shine through keycaps. They are nothing to write home about whatsoever. In fact, most people will probably just replace them. That's fine. You gotta cut some corners somewhere. But then these switches are actually quite interesting. These are the Astro Snipe switches. They're a linear switch. They feel kind of crappy. And you might notice, thank you for sipping the water, Nola. You're doing so good. Good job. Yeah, my cat drinks out of a Crown Royal cup because she is royalty. I mean, what more do you want from me? Nola, what do you think of these switches? I think she likes them. Nola's a bit of a magnetic switch enjoyer gone wrong. Now, honestly, these have the same issue that I have with every other magnetic switch. They sound terrible. They feel fine, but you might notice this keyboard is hot swap. I just removed that switch, which means one very important thing. Now, if you know anything about Hall effect keyboards or magnetic switch keyboards, you might know that typically they only support one kind of switch. However, the thing that makes this different than Hall effect keyboards is that it's TMR, aka tunnel magneto resistance. Now, you don't need to know anything about that technology, but what you do need to know is that it doesn't need a direct line of sight of the magnet like Hall effect does, to put it really simply, meaning that you can shift where the sensor is on the PCB, which happens to open up some room for hot swap sockets. And that's what makes TMR incredibly exciting for me. If you know anything about Hipyo tech, he hates Hall effect switches because they sound really bad. And he hates Hall effect switches because they don't feel very good. And he hates Hall effect switches because marketing is really aggressive and has made gamers think that if they don't have a Hall effect switch, then they can't actually game, which is really stupid. I'm ranting again. Just watch any of my other videos on Hall effect keyboards. And this one solves that because it has hot swap sockets, meaning that despite the fact that I just pulled the magnetic switch out of this keyboard, if we take a look at these Starlit switches, which are also from Akko, I'll be doing something special with them later, which is a standard mechanical switch with pins. I can take this switch, flip it, and put it in the keyboard. Boom. Now, this is pretty revolutionary because if you know anything about using rapid trigger keyboards, you'll know it's only super useful for a couple specific keys. And you're probably wondering, what are those uses, Hipyo? Well, you have rapid trigger, which essentially makes it so when you press a key and you start to return, you can automatically press the key again by starting to press. So essentially, you press down, you release just a tiny bit, and you can already press down again, making it so spamming keys is way easier. This is incredibly broken for games like Osu and potentially really annoying in other games if you're not used to it. Now, it also has features like Snap Tap, which watch my video on that up here. And if you want to learn more about Hall effect keyboards and rapid trigger and why you might want one, then I do recommend you just watch my first video on the wooting as well. But the ability to swap this out makes it pretty revolutionary because you can just keep Hall effect switches on your WASD and maybe even just swap out 4 switches whenever you want to game because it takes all of 10 seconds and then your keyboard will sound and feel better the rest of the time. Now, is this that much different than just swapping to a different keyboard for gaming and typing? Kind of. Actually, because you might get used to a specific muscle memory, or you might get used to a specific switch feel, or a specific just desk setup, and it's really cumbersome to own 2 separate keyboards, and some people can't afford that. Totally reasonable. But is there any advantage to using the TMR sensors? Well, some. Number one, it's more energy efficient. So if you're using a board with full TMR sensors, it will use a little bit less energy than a Hall effect keyboard. Number two, there's 0.1 milliseconds of less latency compared to a Hall effect sensor. Not really that significant, but hey, it exists. If you're interested in the super nitty gritty, then the YouTuber Techless did a pretty good deep dive and compared a lot of those. So check out their channel for testing. As you saw in the unboxing, it has a wireless dongle, which means that you could use it wirelessly. I haven't tested any of that latency, so I'm not gonna make any claims on that. But then also, most importantly, this isn't some new closed ecosystem, kind of like what Asus did with their magnetic stuff. This still supports a bunch of mainstream good, in air quotes, magnetic switches. Now, Akko has the full list down below, and the compatibility is a little bit shaky. You do have to use a special calibration tool in their app, which we're gonna talk about their app later. But at surface level, I'm very excited because this is super promising technology. However, it also comes in a different keyboard, which we'll talk about more soon. And also, is it worth it at all? Now, the first thing we need to talk about is, does this keyboard sound or feel good completely stock? Your answer is no. It sounds pretty bad. It feels pretty bad. I mean, the stabilizers are lubed, so that's a plus. But if I got this thing, I would be not very stoked on it. It doesn't sound any different than a Wooting 60HE or some of the other rapid trigger keyboards like the Drunk Deer that I've looked at. In fact, it might even sound worse. However, this is the stock configuration with the stock magnetic switches. And if you do plug in this keyboard, you might notice that you also have a stock software. Now, let's talk about the software before I swap out all of these switches to one that will make this board sound and feel way better to show you what its potential is. The software sucks. That's kind of my experience with it. Like, it exists, it's a web software. It kind of gets the job done, but from someone that's used a lot of different softwares for various rapid trigger keyboards, it was just clunky. It left a lot to be desired. It was hard to tell if rapid trigger was actually on. It was hard to tell what my actuation points were set to. And genuinely, this is the biggest pain point you will have with this keyboard. Now, theoretically, Mons Geek, Akko, whoever you want to call them, they're the same brand, will update and improve the software with time. But I looked at some reviews of this keyboard from a while ago, and the software hasn't really changed. It's still pretty clunky. So that is something to keep in mind here. Wooting is still miles ahead of the competition, but then even some other brands like Keychron have figured out how to have a software that's not super clunky. So I don't know what's going on, guys. You kind of need to fix that. Even Drunk Deer did it. Even a drunk deer was able to make the software good. Let's figure it out. Also, one thing that was really annoying is their calibration tool didn't work wirelessly. So even if you do use this board wirelessly, you still have to keep the cable handy for if you swap switches back and forth, because you will need to calibrate those switches. Which, having to calibrate a keyboard is just kind of annoying in general, I gotta say. But this is a budget-focused gaming keyboard. So theoretically, you pay a small amount, you get your keyboard up front, and then you pay a little bit more for some upgrades later. For example, these Starlet switches were 26 bucks from Akko for 90 of them. That's a pretty good value. You've got your keyboard now up to 90-ish bucks if you bought it while it was on sale. And theoretically, you could buy 6 of these Astrolink switches to improve your magnetic switch performance. But let's just go ahead and swap everything out and see, is this going to be worth your time? I'll be right back. Okay, so I just finished modding it and I definitely have some thoughts. So, it looks a bit different, right? I swapped the keycaps, I swapped the switches, and I even did a tape mod. 3 things that typically make keyboards sound way better. And this keyboard does sound way better. It does feel better, especially with the Akko Starlet switches, which are factory lubed and are pretty great switches. But it's still not that great. Like, to be fair, a keyboard that costs about $100, like the Yunzi AL80, will sound and feel better than this with all of the mods that I put into it. However, the key advantage here is that I can have my WASD be magnetic switches. That way I can use the magnetic switches for gaming. But how does it sound now that I've modded it? Better, thockier, nice. But the biggest elephant in the room is that Mons Geek has also added the same technology to their M1V5 TMR edition. And even though it is arguably 40, 50 bucks more, I think that is the better keyboard in almost every way. And based off everything I've tried from all of their other Mons Geek boards, I think that's gonna be the better keyboard in almost every way. In fact, get subscribed because I might be turning that into the best gaming keyboard ever. So ultimately, this is the best budget gaming keyboard I've ever tried. It's very affordable, gives you a lot of room to work with, but definitely cuts a lot of corners. However, the potential to just swap out the switches with mechanical switches does solve every issue I've ever had with magnetic switch keyboards. Did I have fun? About 60 of them.